Direct from Montreal, Canada, this is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon from deep inside the isolation cave that I'm currently in. It is great over here. It's great. It's quiet, very quiet, but music is what is going to keep me sane. And one of my favorite artists, Huey Lewis and the News, recently put out a new album called Weather. And it's only about 6 or 7 songs. In fact, it's 7 songs. And listen, I love it. They were supposed to complete the album, have a 10 or 12 song thing. The front man, Huey, got sick with this disease with his ears. And of course, they weren't able to complete the album. So they put out what was available and ready to go. And of course, when I was a young whippersnapper, the album Sports was my entire life. I guess it pretty much preoccupied me, through 83, 84, I guess. And speaking to a member of the Huey Lewis band, to me, is as important as talking to Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley, quite frankly. So I sat down with guitarist Johnny Colla. And fun fact, Johnny was in a band called Rubicon, which would later featured Brad Gillis, Jack Blades, and Kelly Keegy. Oh, you think I know those names? That's right. Rubicon had 3 members at one point of Night Ranger and one guy from the Huey Lewis and the News band. Anyway, Johnny and I did this interview. We got along so great that we said, you know what? We are going to do a second interview, a part 2. And we did a part 2 about 2 or 3 weeks later. And it's funny because I listened back to this tape and I said, okay, you can't ask him the same questions. And then we did the part 2 and I'll explain it during part 2. But I was like, wait, did I ask him this or did I mean to ask him this? Or did I put this? Or I made these notes and I was like, was the note to ask him this or not ask him this? Or if asked him this, so don't repeat myself. Anyway, so in part 2, I think I doubled down on some of the questions. But anyway, let us get over to Johnny Colla, and this is a special one in the sense that Johnny did the editing on this. So he took the raw audio and he pieced it together for you. So I present to you, as prepared by the one and only Johnny Colla. Here is guitarist Johnny Colla. We are speaking with Johnny Colla of course, Huey Lewis and the News. The new album, Weather, is out now. And, of course, there is a deluxe edition from Walmart, which is actually very much worth the entry price, I guess is the best way to say it. But as we say in Montreal, bonjour, Johnny. How are you?
Well, bonjour. I'm fine, thank you. I just having a great time here. Looking forward to this interview, multitasking, making some soup, feeding the dogs, go down to the basement studio. It's all good, man. It's a beautiful day today here in Marin County, California. I only have to say, and I have to make sure that this doesn't extend into 6 p.m. PST because the debates are coming on here in the lower 48. I'd like to hear what the Democrats have to say. I'm not going to say my political affiliation, but I'll vote for anyone who does not have a red comb over.
Well, see, I'm bald, so you're never going to be vote. Well, actually, you might vote for me since I'm bald, actually. But yeah,
okay.
Well, so we'll speed it up and we'll get you out of here. And I did speak to a former bandmate of yours earlier today, Brad Gillis of Night Ranger, but of course, back in the day, you were in Rubicon together, and I told him that you had some guitars to sell, jokingly.
Oh,
and right away he said, yeah, you have him email me. So you might have a sale on your hand.
I'll bet he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I'm too lofty for Brad. He knows that. So, but yeah, we had a great time in Rubicon. It was short but sweet. I was probably, in full disclosure here, I'll bet I was in 4 or 5 bands at once. Because you're just busking, and you're trying to make ends meet, and you'll do anything for a dime, and you'll do anything to make it and get a record deal. So that's what was going on with Rubicon. Jerry Martini got me involved in the band. They never made a record while I was involved. But I can remember Jack Blades being insanely jealous because I'd finish a rehearsal, let's say, at Jerry's place somewhere up in Sonoma County, and Jack would say, "So where are you going now? Are you going to go rehearse with Huey?" And I said, "Well, yeah, actually, Jack, I think I am." He goes, "Oh, Huey? You're going to go rehearse with Huey?" And I said, "Yeah, what's kind of gets caught in your craw there, huh?"
Well, hey, listen.
But it was all friendly banter.
Things worked out with Huey, and I do want to get into the early albums and the early time, but I also, since you mentioned that you were doing these 3-4 bands at the same time and just busking and sort of, I just, of course, interviewed Emilio Castillo of Tower of Power, and that's one thing he was saying about it. He was saying, boy, the guys in Huey Lewis and the News are terrific players, but I don't understand why they're not going out and being part of whatever Ringo's All-Star Band, or why they're not going to join some other thing. So before we get into the whole Huey Lewis weather and I Hear Voices, why are you sort of homebound and not part of these other, I guess, super groups or established artists going out? Because the talent is there, obviously.
Sure. Well, let's see, Mitch. How do I say this gracefully? Regarding Ringo starring as All-Stars, that's sort of a clean and sober outfit, and I do like a bit of a pint every now and then, so that rules me out there. And nothing against sobriety, but they're great guys. I'm good friends with Steve Lukather, and I know if I wanted to do something like that, I could make the pitch, probably get turned down, but what the hell. I think it's not about the money. Suffice it to say, if we went out in some form or another, it would be a lot more work for a much smaller audience, and the travel would be different. Everything would be different. But in spite of all those things I say, most of all, I still hold hope that my number one man's hearing is going to come back, and we're going to be out there in a heartbeat. There's still that chance.
Okay, so do we want to talk about Huey and the hearing straight up front, or do we want to get into the album and then work? Well, okay, you know what? It's here.
Entirely up to you.
Okay, so it's here. Let's talk about that. He does, of course, have, and God, my pronunciation, Meniere's disease, which affects the inner ear and hearing loss and dizziness. You have said that you hope that he gets better. What are the chances of hoping they get better? We know with Brian Johnson of AC/DC, they talked about in-ears, special in-ears that'll help balance stuff out and get him back on stage. Is that sort of the same case with Huey? Do we need special in-ears? Does this disease just miraculously disappear? Is there a vaccine? And I don't want to sound ignorant, but I am ignorant of this disease. I mean,
sure.
I'm not a doctor.
Understood. Well, to back those up, it's no, yes, and no. There is no cure, and Meniere's is a you can't even use those terms anymore. It's a fickle person, let's say. It comes on and it appears in myriad ways. Huey's particular version of Meniere's is a situation where you hear bass guitar, boom, 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 boom. What Huey hears is potato chips. And that low end distortion, it basically masks the mids and the highs. His hearing also fluctuates, between a 1 and a 10, or it should certainly, but he only gets up to about a 6 and sometimes a 1.5 and a 2. So not only are his ears distorted, but there's a serious loss of hearing. And if you really want to back up, my man had, hearing issues when he was a kid, tubes and drainage and all those things that some of us have been through, and everyone's shaking their head. Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I was there. So he had that going. And, to be completely transparent about this, Huey's been working with one ear for about 15 years or more. He lost 80-90% of his hearing in one side, and when the other side went out, can't can't remember my right foot from my left here. That was, sort of the nail in the coffin for the moment.
Right. Well, okay. So there is hope, though, that maybe he can somehow figure it out and you'll get back to touring. Now, and I'm going to ask you yeah.
I should probably finish it off.
Okay.
The good news is his hearing fluctuates. I've done several tests with him in the studio, and on a 5 or a 6 day, he can sing to open end headphones and to little speakers out of a laptop. So the good news is his hearing fluctuates. If he was flatlining, I'd start looking for another gig. I'd produce records. That's what I'd do. Stay in my house and multitask and produce records. But we still have a chance, and let's face it, we all like to get up there on the planks, for that 110 minutes or whatever it is, and see the smiles on people's faces. There's also the camaraderie of being in a band with the same guys for 4 decades, and I miss that backstage banter and brushing each other's shoulders off before we go on, and telling bad jokes and being the brunt of a bad joke, whatever it is. We're like old souls with each other.
Yeah, I can imagine. And of course, a lot of folks think that you and Huey Lewis start at Sports in like '83, but of course, you go back before the Rubicon days to his, and I'm blanking on the name of the band that he was in before, but
Clover.
There you go, which is in my playlist.
Yeah.
So it goes back to those days and those clubs and all that. All right, so let me ask you the unpopular question, but understand how I frame it, because would you consider going out while he's on the sideline as the news and be very clear with the audience? No, we're not replacing him. This is not an abdication of the throne, but just to go out there and play the songs and say, we have a special guest this week who's going to sing, and next week it'll be like, would you consider touring and bringing the music to the people without Huey, but being very clear, listen, we're not replacing him. It's not a new singer. It's just us doing these gigs. Is that something that is thought of, or is that disrespectful, or is that forget it? Like, how would you take that?
Never. In a word, never. We were a tight-knit organization, and there's all kinds of formulas for bands, but I think it's safe to say that Huey Lewis and the News, the sum has always been bigger than the parts. And I know lots of guys right now are either shaking their head no or yes, and we never let our egos overtake the main focus of the band, and that was to get out what we do best. We are a real democracy. I could never imagine doing that, and that's been brought up by more than one person. If we did anything at all like that, I had a kind of funny concept of bringing out, the music that original players in the band fancied, and our musical history runs deep. I mean, Chris Hayes is an absolutely burned down jazz and bebop player. And we dabbled in some funny little 3-4 piece hard rock stuff I used to record on my 4-track. And as you know, I kind of have my own little career going on the side. I could do some of my stuff. And I think I speak for all the principals that are still involved. I don't really have the gumption to get in there and do that and take it out on the road. I love our fans. I love what we did. But if we can't go out as a cohesive unit, really, at this point, why bother? I don't want to be, I won't name names, but I don't want to be one of those bands that goes out and there's one band member left, They're calling themselves Joe Smuggins, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I would never stoop that low and compromise the brand that is Huey and the News.
Okay, which is fair enough. Though I could envision special Vegas club dates with the News featuring whatever the guy from Queen or whatever these days. Anyway. But let me get on to this to the new album. We of course know that Huey has his hearing. It's only 7 songs. My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you were working on an album and then this diagnosis came and you weren't able to complete it. How accurate is that description? And was it always intended as an EP?
Okay, for how accurate was that? Might have been something, who knows who, maybe the record company or the publicist cooked up. I mean, if you go back and count the songs that were pitched for this album, we probably have a double CD, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? And we picked our songs carefully. I think it's why, even though it's only 7 songs long, is why it's such a cohesive record, and we're getting a lot of comparisons to, let's say, sports and stuff like that around the world, which I'm extremely proud of, because we didn't want to compromise and just put on 3 more songs just to fill out a record, to make it 10 songs long. Those 7 made the cut somewhere around September, October of 2017. And of course, we fell into the abyss with Huey on January 27th of 2018. And, that was it. We had what we had. I'd gotten all his vocals, but he had no problems in the studio up until then. Okay. In fact, to this day, I'm sure if we got in there and fooled around and I did it just right, I could probably get him to sing to tracks. It's a much different situation on stage, of course. Every musician knows the low end it dominates a room, and it's impossible at this point, unfortunately.
So there is a possibility that, okay, he can't play, but he could maybe record down the road. But all right, so let me ask you about the songwriting, because if you go back through the history of the band, a lot of the albums have, of course, cover songs on them. Sports had 3. It had Honky Tonk.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mitch. I want to cut something in. You can reel back, figure out how to put this in later. But yes, that's right. Everyone thinks the world of Huey and the News started with sports.
It didn't.
Or maybe the first hit on Picture This. We actually had a first record out, a self-titled debut album that I'm sure you know of, called Huey Lewis and the News. And it's young and vibrant and angry, and there's some great lyrics, and you can see the short hair and the jackets and the skinny ties. And I'm hoping at some point in time we can figure out a way to re-release that, but still working on it.
Okay, so well,
sorry for the cut in.
No, that's fine. In fact, I'm going to go right down to that one, because you've got a song on there called "Who Cares," which probably has the greatest guitar solo of the band's career. It's that "Who Cares" is just bloody brilliant. Okay, so let's start at the beginning then with.
How about that? And Chris Hayes, right? That burning solo.
Yeah.
Chris Hayes might have been 22.
Wow. So okay,
more like 21, 22 years old. Hey, Chris was just a monster.
And we need to convince him to come back.
Yeah, I think he might do it at this point. He was such a monster, and not a lot of folks know this, but here you go. Full disclosure. I did not play guitar in a band in earnest until we started Huey Lewis and the News. And our manager at the time one day came up to me quietly and said, wow, you really compliment Huey's voice, and you're invaluable to this thing we have going here. And moving forward, he says, it's kind of weird though. You just stand there and play sax. Do you do anything else? And I said, well, yeah, actually, I know my cowboy chords on guitar. One of those. And he said, great, let's put a guitar on you. So I'll credit our manager for doing that. And to that end, I had the best teacher in the world. I had Chris Hayes, almost 10 years my junior, who is, just teaching me the most amazing stuff in the world. My hat will always be off to him.
Such a tasty player. But okay, so let me go to this first one and let's talk about musical direction. Because you listen to that first album and it's got a very much sort of, and maybe you don't like my description, but I would call it sort of a power pop punk. It's got a Cheap Trick kind of essence to it, with maybe a little bit of Elvis Costello to it, with maybe some of that early pop. It's not a punk record, but it's also not a pop record. It's got some aggressive edge to it yet. And then by the time we get to Sports, and then by the time we get to 4, if you go from the first album to 4, it's as if we've got 2 completely different bands. So talk to me about that sound and breaking out in the early 80s and being sort of a Cheap Trick-ish kind of Elvis Costello-ish kind of thing, and then moving over to Picture This and then getting to sort of an arena rock sound. I've always called it preppy rock. I don't even know if that's a term, but I invented it.
Good enough for me. Yeah, Huey was the boy next door, of course. Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah. So let's talk about that. How do we go from, Who Cares, Trouble in Paradise, Some of My Lies Are True, which is admittedly my favorite song that you've ever done. How do we go from that? It's number 1 in my playlist. That's how important it is. But how do we go from that
I'll be damned.
all the way down to the stuff on 4, for example? How, did the record company come to you? Did MTV come to you? Did the management go, hey, we love you, but it's no longer the sound. If you want to be on radio, you gotta. Or was it like, hey, yeah, we've done that. Let's explore it. Like, was it you or was it them?
Well, it was a combination.
Gotcha.
Of the two. That's a loaded question, but I'll try to rattle through it here if I can. We were a band, and our manager picked up on us, and he did one of these things. Give me 6 months. Here's $150 each a month. Hold your breath. Give me 6 months. I'll try to get you a record deal. Great. So, meanwhile, we're still writing songs. We're playing, jumping around California, trying to stay alive. And you got to remember, Huey and Clover, they'd made a couple records in England, and they came back to Marin County, with their tails between their legs. The whole Johnny Rotten punk rock thing had hit. New wave was right around the corner. Nobody really knew it yet. And Huey brought a little of that back. I remember I was living in L.A. playing with Sly Stone, and Huey and I remained friends, even though we were in different parts of the world, writing letters and talking on the phone and stuff. One of those, a bromance, let's face it. And so, Clover comes home with their tails between their legs. They've not really made it as we thought they would, although in California we thought they were huge. And he wanted to start a band. And first he wanted to get myself and the drummer to England to restart Clover. Nope, that ain't going to work. All right, we're coming home. Let's get a band going. Let's go jam with Nick Gravenitis, whatever. We'll be the horn section. Your sax and my harmonica. We'll bum around Marin County. Great. So Huey comes home and we start this thing called the Monday Night Live Band. And it's really a platform to figure out who's going to be in Huey in the News. And we were conspiring and we were figuring out heads and stuff. So also what I think a lot of folks don't know is Huey Lewis in the News is comprised of 2 guys from Clover and 3 guys from my band, Soundhole, strangely enough. Bill Gibson, Mario Cipollina, and myself. See, we had a band, and Huey used to come and watch us play, and that's how we became friends. And I used to go hang out with Clover, and their bass player would give me the stink eye, and so that's that bit. And so what happened is we finally condensed it down to a band, and we had 6 guys. Our guitar player, Chris, was still on the fence, but we were writing songs like crazy. Our manager gave us 6 months. He said, here's $150 a week, 6 months. I'll try to get you a deal. He got us a record deal with Chrysalis Records. Huey brought that punk, aggressive element back to California. And while, a lot of folks were still wearing spandex and trying to look like and sound like Peter Frampton, we were sort of going a different way at the time, and it attracted Chrysalis Records. They liked edgy stuff, and they kind of got it. So we had a 3-record deal with Chrysalis. We only have 10 or 12 songs, so that's that. We're going to give them what we got. We'd written the tunes, and boom, take it or leave it. And we recorded the record in a very short period of time. We used a producer, which was much to my chagrin. I wanted to make the record on our own. I thought we were perfectly capable. But the whole idea was to make it fast and furious, sort of like the punk records at the time. And the problem is, it sounded really small and really weird. So the producer kind of took our attitude to heart, and we made this record that I'm afraid didn't crack the Billboard 200, I think.
I don't think it did, actually.
So that was, huh?
I don't think it did, actually.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So those that thing's kind of sitting out there for Huey Lewis and the News as a band, to rediscover what was going on before sports knocked everyone out. Well, now you got a 3-record deal. You're getting a little antsy because you don't have a single. Nothing happened. The record died a death. And as we're even out there on the road off the first record, we're killing them live, I got to say. And probably if I could make a comparison, sort of like the Police did behind their first effort. I mean, they were out there in a van, 3 guys in a van, busking around in a town to town, just killing the audiences. And we pretty much did the same thing. It was a lot of work, took a lot of years off our lives, but we did it anyhow. And we were writing the whole time. So picture this comes around, and we had to get a little more serious. And I'll credit our manager one more time. What he really liked about our band was what he called Beauty and the Beast. And that was basically Huey's rough voice and my concept and my harmonic concept for backing vocals. He coined the term, Huey Lewis and the News, Beauty and the Beast. And we all thought that was a great joke. But as it happens, it paid off on the second record. And we got one away with Do You Believe in Love?
Which is a song I want to ask you about, if I can real quick, because it was a song by Supercharge, which was included Mutt Lange. How did that come about? Did they submit the song? Did you hear it and decide to record it? And ultimately, as sports hits and your stock rises in 84, 85, 86, Power of Love, Back to the Future, you're everywhere. And of course, Mutt Lange, AC/DC, Def Leppard. But at some point, you guys never worked together. And I know Huey recently, like about a month ago, did an interview and he says, yeah, I'm still friends with Mutt. Why did the Mutt-Huey collaboration never happen?
Well, first of all, you just trumped me. Did Mutt and a band release Do You Believe in Love?
They released a song called We Both Believe in Love on their 1979 album Body Rhythm.
Right.
See?
So as that happens, I believe, I could be wrong, I think Mutt produced a Clover record over in England.
Yes, he did.
That was the connection. Mm-hmm. So, Huey is an amazingly amicable guy. I mean, he's just, if he likes you, you like him, and the rest is history. Him and Mutt hit it off real well, and they became fast friends. And then you fast forward here, Mutt's throwing songs at Huey, this and that, and he threw We Both Believe in Love to us. And I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, man, it's kind of a cool tune. And I said, yeah, man, I hear it. It's really good, man. The BVs are great, everything. He goes, I can't sing that. I can't sing We Both Believe in Love. I'm not that kind of guy. What do we do? I said, I don't know. Change the lyrics. Figure it out. So he rewrites the lyrics and calls it Do You Believe in Love? You would be better versed than me to know whether he changed the words inside of the tune.
He did actually change it, and I will say respectfully, made it better. I've heard the original version a bunch of times, and when you hear "We both believe," and you go, "What the f is that? What is that?" But then you hear "Do you believe in love?" and you go, "Ah, yes."
I'm going to take credit for that too, and I don't know who suggested it, but I sang all 8 backing vocals on that tune. That's where the manager said, whoa, that's pretty cool, man. There's Beauty and the Beast, So, and we finally got one away there. But that's what happened with Mutt. And to get back to it, I think would probably become very obvious to you when I say it. Although we have great respect for Mutt and everything he's done and what he does to the present, we're really cut from different cloths. We're a self-produced band. We know what we want. We know how to get it. And it just wouldn't work. It's almost like, like a high school friend who you always had a crush on. And You know she's had a crush on you, but you both know better not to act on it. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. It doesn't sometimes.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this real quick about producing your own records. I have always said, maybe incorrectly, that I think bands need an outside producer because you need outside ears to sort of get you away from being too self-indulgent and so on and so forth. But then you look at a band like Huey Lewis with Picture This, with Weather, Sports, and all that, and you go, well, okay, that sort of beats my theory because you certainly can't complain that those albums were poorly done, or I mean they're perfectly done. But why not seek an outside producer? Why not go get Rick Rubin or Bob Rock, or I mean these are all the heavy metal guys that I know. But why not get one of those guys and say, okay, we're turning this one over to you because we want some outside ears.
Mm-hmm. Well, production is a strange animal. And from the very beginning, we collectively knew what we wanted. That's a pretty tough one to come into for any producer. And to that end, I'll say, for our second record, we'd worked with a producer on record number 1. Picture This comes along, and we're starting to write some pretty darn good songs for it, doing our best writing tunes. And we're getting better at it, but we're also getting better at recording, hence producing. So, it comes time to make the record, and I want to say is either the label, our manager, or the combination of the two, they want to stick us with another producer. And I can't name names, but we went through probably 4 or 5 of the top producers there in the early, mid-'80s. We brought them up. We gave them, we threw them a bone, hey, let's go in and cut this tune, see how this works. And at the end of the day, we sent them all home, one by one, and said, we can do that. I know we can do that. And matter of fact, we can do it better. All we need is an engineer that can get the sounds we want. Well, I've taken care of that now, thankfully. So we don't even need an engineer anymore. But that was the turning point. We knew we could make our own records and we could make them good. And that got us through Picture This and our first, top 10 song. So then you move on to Sports, and now we're down to our third record. And, everyone's holding their collective breath. And
could have been the end of the band if you had screwed it up. It could have been the end of the band. Just real quick on an aside, because I do want to get into sports, and I know we only have about 10 minutes left because it's almost 9 o'clock here, or 6 o'clock. But in terms of production, and if fans haven't had a chance, in 2001 you put out an album called Plan B, and you can just forget the songs on there for a second. The sound of that album is probably the sweetest sounding album that I have ever heard, or certainly one that wasn't produced by Mutt Lange. It just sounds huge. It sounds full. It sounds pleasant. It sounds. You just put that in the earphones, and you listen to Plan B, and you go, "Holy fuck! Who produced that?" And you look at you and you go, "Wow, what a miracle!" I mean, that album is perfect. But back to sports.
Good. Well, I'm glad you like it. That's really, we were getting heavy there. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm let's say somewhere in the deep 60s, okay? And so everybody else in the band, we have gotten better at what we do in all respects. And I personally have really put myself in the producer's seat, not because I demanded it or anything. It's just sometimes you get things right, and they become more right over time. And it goes a little bit back to that thing about why didn't you use Mutt, or why didn't we use these other guys? There's a lot of production techniques. There's the engineer who got the production hot seat and doesn't know a darn thing about music except what he likes and what he doesn't like, or she. On the other end of that spectrum, I have to name this name because he knows it and the world knows it. There's the Todd Rundgren production. You make a record with Todd, it sounds like Todd. I've always thought somehow that I fall somewhere in the middle, and that is I'll take what the band has and make the best of what they have and try to keep my personal influences at a minimum. The hardest thing possibly in the world to do is to do that with guys you've known for 30 years. It's a frightening thought when I think back, but we have gotten better and better at it. And I mean, to this day, I have an absolute ball with these guys, you know.
In terms of making albums with the guys, do they walk in and go, okay, Johnny's producing this and it's been successful, let him go? Or do you get in there and every time it's like a wrestling match and you go, no, this is how it's going to be, just do it? Like, is there just sort of a, we know what we want and let Johnny do it? Or is there still sort of a creative struggle and eventually you win? How does it work?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. We've known each other so long. We know that Sean's going to come in and work on the knobs, maybe sometimes one of the parts. And we know Bill's going to play with the drums because that's a serious setup, let's face it. Meanwhile, while they're futzing, I'm trying to make sure the sound coming through the speakers is what I know we're after. What am I trying to say here? We just, like I said, we've slowly fallen into our roles and we're comfortable with them. And we push and pull each other a little bit. And every so often someone has a radical idea that works. Every so often they have a radical idea that doesn't. No one gets their feelings hurt. No one crawls out of the studio going, never again. You know what I mean? It's a happy meeting place. And we know there's going to be a certain amount of teeth gnashing, which is okay. And most of all, though, I think we go in prepared and we know the track we're going to cut and what we're going to play on the basic track. And that's extremely important. Yes, there's a little leeway there, but we've already kind of tweaked the arrangement, and we know that the modern recording techniques allow you to change your arrangement later and this and that. So that's for kids, you know, that conflict.
Yeah, it really is. But unfortunately, as you know, it's broken up many bands and caused many bruised egos and stuff. I did want to talk about the songwriting. I mentioned it a little bit before, but what I was trying to get to is on every album, there seems to be outside writers or songs that are you look at Jacob's Ladder, which is a Bruce Hornsby song. You look at Simple as That, which is a Tower of Power song. You look at, Do You Believe in Love? You look at, Buzz, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Was there a conscious decision to always have a cover or some kind of outside thing, or was that a management thing, or how did it always come up that there was always one song, if not two songs, if not three songs, that were from outside?
No, there was never a conscious effort there. It's just a matter of, hey, how did we do? Here we are in the 11th hour. We've come up with so many tunes. Do we have enough tunes to get this record done? Or should we call 55 of our best friends, I mean, why wouldn't somebody do that? Mitch, it comes back to exactly what you said, egos. Do I have 6 songs on the record? Chris Hayes has 5 or whatever that is. It's just, what are the 10 best songs? What are the 12 best songs? Who likes what? And let's get that done to make the best record we can. That is, to have the best cuts on the record we can. So that's really the thinking behind that. I'll say this also. Sometimes it gets like a feeding frenzy. You call a buddy up and say, hey, we're looking for, hey, what do you got this year? Well, they send you what they think is their best song, and you refuse it, maybe. Then they send you 3 others that aren't even as good as the first one. They're just trying to get a song on the record. So, but that's just healthy competition, man.
It is. And there are 2 bands, by the way, that I have always thought that their covers are better than the originals. Whenever I hear something from Metallica and it's a cover, I go, it's a better version. It just is. And of course, they're down the street from you, right? Of course, right? And and Huey Lewis always seems to be, you hear Tattoo giving it up for love, no disrespect to the Phil Lynott version, but I think it's better. You listen to When I Write the Book, no disrespect to Nick Lowe and his gang, but I think you have the better version, and so on and so forth. So, you're doing it.
Well, if you
doing it right.
Yeah. if you can't turn it into something different, I don't know about better, but if you can't turn it into something different, why do it? And, for every guy, from Elvis Costello to Rod Stewart and Mike McDonald, who put out these beautiful, 50s and 60s Motown efforts, they're great. And a lot of those songs are better than the originals, and they've put their signature on the tunes. And that's what's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And at some point, I would love to hear the Thin Lizzy version of Bad Is Bad, or the Phil Lynott version of Bad Is Bad, get officially released and not just leaked to YouTube. I will finish on this for today, because I will stick to the 9 o'clock so that you can go watch the debates.
Okay.
Because that's the fair thing to do. And of course, I could go on forever. Back to the Future. Sports comes out, huge success, puts the band on the map. Up here in Canada, honestly, it was the first time I heard of you, because I didn't hear of the Huey Lewis self-titled. Picture This. I think I might have seen Do You Believe in Love, but honestly, I think I saw the video after Sports came out, and they went, hey, the band existed before. But talk to listen, Canada's a different beast, right? I mean, things are a little slower sometimes. But talk to me about this Back to the Future. No.
Hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
Mitch, we have plenty of slow people down here in the lower 48.
I'm sure you do, but musically, listen, it's a little bit more challenging sometimes. I mean, you had MTV, I guess it was 81, right? Video Killed the Radio Stars, something like that. We didn't get much music till 84, so we were a little bit behind the times.
Sure, I remember Much Music. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good old Much Music. But okay, so Sports comes out, you're on top of the world, and then somebody says to me, hey, Mitch, have you heard their new song, Power of Love? And I go, what new song, Power of Love? It's not on Sports. What are you talking about? They don't have a new album out. And they produced a single, and I went, buggers. Why is that not on the That was my reaction. But talk to me about that. Was that a song that was just sort of sitting in the vault, and you decide to use it? Do the producers come to you and say, we need you to write a song, in fact, 2 songs for us? Or was this, and how did that change the band? Because it seemed to me that after that came out, we went from sports hysteria to a whole new level of hysteria. Talk to me a little bit about Back to the Future.
Yeah, well, first of all, from the nature of your question, I would compare Power of Love to my quest to figure out the Beatles' Hey Bulldog and why it was never on a record. Where did it come from? Of course, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have any medium at the time to figure that stuff out, and I didn't figure it out for years. That Bulldog, missed this or that, and it never got on a record, and it only was the B-side of a single. And I love the tune. I couldn't figure out how the Beatles missed that. How that never got on the record. So Power of Love, I guess, is something similar. We're hotter than a $3 pistol on a Saturday night behind Sports. And Huey gets a call from, Bob Zemeckis or somebody. They want us to write a tune for Back to the Future. And I don't think it got pitched to me, or I dropped the ball on it. I can't remember. But first thing Huey said was, well, we don't really do that, write a song for a movie. I mean, no. We just want a Huey and the News song. See, the protagonist of this movie likes Huey Lewis and the News, and they want a Huey and the News song. Oh, okay, great. We'll give it a shot. So, I don't know. You can go online and figure out how the song developed, but the first demo was kind of Bob Zemeckis and the powers that be thought it wasn't quite peppy enough or something. I don't know how to explain it. So it came back to us, and I'm sort of, I have a nickname in the organization here. I'm known as the dentist, because when we...
It's a good nickname.
When we get in the studio, when we get in the studio or writing a song or working on this or that, I really get in there and pick. Not as bad as Mutt Lange, mind you, but I really like to get in there and dig, figure out how to make this a better song. I don't care who wrote it. I don't care if I was a part of it. I just want to make it better for the common cause of Huey and the News. So Huey suggested Chris get together with me at my little home studio and try to rework the demo. And I came up with all I really did from my own side was rearrange it, I cut a bridge out and some other part that kind of went on too long. But I think my biggest contribution was simply ba ba da 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 da, and it didn't seem like anything at the time. And as it turned out, that little horn punch on a synthesizer became almost strangely as important as the lead vocal in a weird way. It was the secondary star figure that, held the intro and the choruses and the ride out. And I think that's kind of what production is about, paying attention to.
Absolutely. And so identifiable. I don't mean to cut you off, but so identifiable. What was that? Name That Tune. Remember that TV show, Name That Tune? You hear or whatever from Power of Love, and you don't need to hear anything else. You go, Power of Love, Huey Lewis. Like there's a lot of songs where you don't hear that. There's songs where you need to hear like a 2-minute clip, and you go, yeah, I still don't know. Yeah, I still don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But with Power of Love, you hear that, you go, Power of Love, Huey Lewis, Back to the Future, 1985. Let's go. What else you got for me? I mean, it's a riff. It's like Aerosmith's, Walk This Way. You hear that, and you go, okay, I got it. Aerosmith. I mean, it's that powerful.
Going back even further, we had this show on radio, I don't know, KKIS or one of the KUWB, called Name It and Claim It. What they do is play a half a second of a song, and kids would call in from all over the Bay Area. That's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. No, bang, they get the buzz. Okay, then they play a second of the song. All the kids would call in, name the song. No, can't claim it. And pretty soon they get up, and finally some kid, they're up to a second and a half of the tune. Some kid would say, Rolling Stones, 19th Nervous Breakdown. Ding, 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 you win. Very exciting stuff.
Well, you don't have to get that far with Power of Love. Yeah.
Right? Those signature riffs become extremely important in production, and I hate to use the term. I've always hated it, but ear candy is important on the radio.
Well, yeah. I mean, Huey Lewis's career is built on ear candy, and since we were talking about Mutt Lange, sorry to say, but you go back and listen to Hysteria, the Def Leppard album, that is 60 minutes of ear candy. It is sugary sweet, pour some sugar on me, whatever you want to call it. But it's forget saccharin, that is full sugar, and it's great. And by the way, since you mentioned Hey Bulldog, if you haven't heard the version that Alice Cooper does, you should go check that out, because Alice does a killer version of Hey Bulldog. Now, it is past 9 o'clock. Should we say bonsoir for today and then maybe reconvene for a part 2?
We can do it again.
Yeah, I'd love to do a part 2, because we literally got from 1980 to 1983.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about
bit,
yeah, go ahead.
A lot of guys are asking, weather, and of course we are going through some tumultuous times here with Huey in the news, and weather seemed appropriate. We're getting older. Things are getting a little darker, but, we're nowhere near the finish line. I guess that's fair to say. And, there's the different section of the newspaper besides the sports section. There's weather and there's the comic section. But I like my line best is, why do you call it weather? And I say, well, for the moment, climate change has been a bit overused.
Well, you know what? I actually thought maybe in my own little creative way, I thought it should have been weather, WHETHER, like whether or not to continue, or whether or not to go on, or whether or not, or, expressing some kind of choice, or, whether or not I should buy this album. I thought that would have been kind of cute. With the same picture, the same Golden Gate Bridge and the whole thing, but instead of going weather with it. Anyway, that's my own little creative thing. That'll be the re-release in a couple of years. I do want to just quickly mention before we leave, you did an album called I Hear Voices, I believe 2012. You did Lucky Devil, what was that, 2099? Anyway.
Yeah, you tell me.
A while back.
You're better at this than me.
Oh, I am the research king when it comes to these things. But you are, we do have the new Huey Lewis Weather album. You are working on a cappella version of I Hear Voices. When will that be ready? Are you recutting exactly the same songs, or are you recutting like 3 of the songs and then have 8 new ones? And if you do Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen again, if you do not put Ready Freddy in it, I can't go on. But
I know.
But
so
when
actually, Mitch,
go ahead.
it's actually just the opposite. I'm taking all the cuts I already did, and I'm removing instruments and getting it down to actually the way I originally wanted to make the record, which was a cappella. But as the tracks started coming together, it just sounded better as a band, and I tried to pick up on that open sounded 60s feel, like everyone's standing in the same room cutting this thing. And so I went with it. And then later on I thought, if I took the drums off this and took the bass off and hand claps, tambourine, and vocalists, that's what I was thinking in the beginning. So I'm about 3 or 4 tracks into it, and it's really, really fun. I get down there and it makes me laugh pulling this stuff up.
I can't wait to hear it. And of course, you do cover yourself. You cover Naturally by Huey Lewis. What else in there? The crazy little thing called Love, I think you got to throw back in Ready Freddy, because there are 2 bands.
Consider that.
There's a band from England called Thunder, and their lead singer is called Danny, and they do a cover of it, and they go, instead of Ready Freddy, they go Ready Danny, and it's like, no, it's not Ready Danny. Don't.
That's just wrong.
Don't do that. But on that, enjoy the debates. As we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. If you ever are up to it, we will do a part 2, because I could deconstruct and go through the career bit by bit. And I do want to hear about the solo career. You do have 2 albums, a third one coming out. A lot of great stuff. And
I got a couple in the can. I just can't find the time to cut them. I've written more songs than I have time to make. So it's a strange juxtaposition compared to 45 years ago when I'm staring at a 4-track machine with no ideas, no beans in my brain musically. It's a great place to be, but I wish I had more time to make records.
The band has come a long way.
I got to add one thing about Naturally on my record, I Hear Voices. Several of those tracks are from my original demo that I pitched to Huey and the News as a 6/8 swing thing, and I kept Chris Hayes' little jazz guitar on it, and maybe we sung some BVs, but that's how I originally conceived the tune. And we're stuck in, I think we're in L.A. I think we're in New York mixing at the power station. And it's like, if you guys had one more tune, man, more money, one of those guys, one of those admin hanging around. So somebody's idea, I think Huey, we decided to pick the tempo up of Naturally and cut it in, let's say, Studio A while we're mixing the record in Studio B. And we finished Naturally and shoved it over to B and mixed it and it got on the record.
It worked out. I love that record. And of course, you redid Little Bitty Pretty One, which eventually came out on 4 chords and several years ago. So there's a lot of great stuff. Right. It's a great. I mean, it's a really, really fun album. I was especially pleased with I Hear Voices. I think that's in fact, I have it in front of me. That's what you hear banging in the background there. But a great album. And at some point, if we get to do a part 2, I do want to discuss all the harmonies and the vocal, because when you listen to the backing vocals, the BVs, as you've been referring to them, there is no band, to me, greater than Huey Lewis. And yes, I've mentioned Def Leppard, and yes, they've got a lot of great backing vocals on their albums, but those are, they're comped versions. They're the thing about Huey Lewis is, especially live, you do those background vocals live, unless I don't know something. But
sure.
You're a real band.
There's no tricks.
Right? There's no tricks.
There's no man behind the curtain.
And that is unbelievable to have that background vocal harmonization, melody, whatever you want to call it, just with the guys on the stage is phenomenal. Not many bands can do that. A lot of bands have to, in the studio, layer 12 tracks and blah, 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 and this and that. And on stage, they're triggering this and trigger. Anyway, it is.
We had a moment, I think we won a BPI award, British Music Award for something. and we're supposed to perform, I guess, and we're on stage. I don't remember a lot of it, not because of any medicinal reasons. It was one of those things. Everyone's there, you know, Beatles and George Martin and everyone you ever admired, and we're up there working, and Phil Collins is there playing piano. He goes, "Whoa, Huey in the News, right? You guys can really sing."
Surprise!
I just got a big kick out of that, yeah.
And I can imagine you're going to whatever, the MTV Awards, and they go, "So where are your tracks? We need to plug them in so that they're ready for the show." And you're like, "No, we don't have tracks." "Well, yeah, of course you do. Everybody does." And it's like, "No, we're live. we're real." Anyway, my greatest regret is that I've only seen you. Yeah, it's phenomenal. There's a magazine in the UK called Classic Rock, and they put out a question. They asked me to answer about the greatest bands with those vocals, and everybody was saying, "Oh, Def Leppard this," and blah, blah, blah. And I went, "Hey, Huey Lewis in the News." And they just went, "Oh, yeah, you're right." And people don't think of it, but it's like, yeah, listen to that. Listen to, you know, Heart and Soul. Listen to listen to any of the songs. It's like, oh, fuck, yeah, listen to that. You're right. Anyway, go.
Well, thanks for being such a massive fan, and why don't we do this again?
I would love to do this again. I'd love to focus a little bit more on Lucky Devil and the Johnny stuff, and then start talking about the late '80s and early '90s. The music business changed. The band's focus changed. To me, I think it went from we're putting out original stuff to Plan B to the chords one, and anyway for. À la prochaine. Part 2 coming soon.
All good stuff, man. Thanks for being so thorough and a great fan, Mitch.
Yeah, listen.
And good. We'll do it again.
Here's a little thing that I'm never going to show anybody, but there is a video of me at 14 years old with a put together headset mic, lip syncing the entire Sports album in my bedroom. It is in a vault. I am not releasing it to anybody, but there is I guess a 35 or 40 minute tape of me lip syncing to every single song on that when I was 14, and that will only be released. I will let the estate release that.
Wait a minute, Mitch. Hold on. I have a few things you might want, so
yes.
There might be a reciprocal here.
Oh, we might have to. Yeah, we'll have to do a trade. It's quite a spectacular thing, and the best part is that I did it in my pajamas with a headband.
Right. Fantastic.
But I will
a Loverboy headband.
A Loverboy head. Of course, I'm Canadian. In fact, that's what it was. It was a John McEnroe headband.
There you go.
To be a little cooler. But I will let my estate release that in 35 years from now.
Yeah, good.
There you go.
Well, let's pick this up. But okay, we off the record?
I will hit.
This has been Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. For more exclusive content and interviews, subscribe on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and many more. Follow Mitch on all the socials, especially Twitter, @Mitch Lafon, and on Instagram, @Mitch_Lafon. Get your Mitch merch now at loudtracks.com/Mitch.